One, two, three.
Hello, can you state your name and your profession again?
My name is Roger Lay. I'm a software engineer in Austin, Texas.
When were you born and where?
I was born in January of 1986 in Amarillo, Texas, which is where we are right now.
Can you tell me about your family journey to America? How do you know about that?
Well, really, it was when my dad would get mad at me about something, and he'd say, I didn't come to this country for you to do this thing or something like that. And that's when I'd hear bits and pieces, but I wouldn't know the full story until I asked him. And really, when I watched Journey from the Fall, the movie, that really inspired me to learn more about my past, because without the past, you don't know your future.
I see. So what do you find out about your family?
That they lived in Cam Ranh, and they left by boat to go to the Philippines. But what I didn't know was how much planning and how many years of making materials to build the boat, to make that dream come true, to find freedom. And really, I asked about why they left and what the conditions were in Vietnam. But just more and more details started coming as I asked more and more questions.
I see. Although information isn't have anything different than what you learn from school or from the material, like books, film available in America?
Well, the first place I looked was in my sophomore year of AP U.S. History, and there was only a very small paragraph about Vietnam at all, because one reason is the Americans don't really like to focus on things that they lost at, and Vietnam is one of them. So they focused their class on World War II and liberating in Europe basically. But in movies, you just, being young, you just accept it as is, and that must be the truth. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in a movie. But when you get older, you understand that they have a bias, and some things they put in is not necessarily true, but it's really meant to entertain you and to go see the movie. And they tend to exaggerate things that they want to. And so definitely, there's no textbook for me to read. And hearing what my parents say, it's sometimes it's totally the opposite of what I read in an American history book. And even if I found a Vietnamese history book, I wouldn't know who the author was, or if it was true, or if it's accurate at all.
So, do you think that if they want to learn about the truth about Vietnam War, Vietnamese American, do you think that all the things available out there had enough information for them to learn the truth?
I don't think it's easily accessible as compared to like American films like Platoon or American Textbook, because that's what you're tested on in school. And so if there's something easily available, like a website or something like that younger generations can look and to find, and things such as historians who say that this is based on what they believe and to be true, and primary sources as well as secondary, that they can back up that information with.
I see. Well, you just listened to the two interviews with your grandpa and your grandfather and your father, and you heard the story about they sell from Móng Cái to Hải Phòng. From Hải Phòng, they would travel with the American ship to Saigon, and after that, when 1975, they sail another time all the way to Philippines. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's great to know that my family was a long line of generations of fishermen, and we had the technical know-how, because I to this day I don't know how to navigate by the stars or know anything about the sea, and even catching fish, like the way they did for a long line. I'm pretty sure it's in my blood somewhere, but it just makes me very proud that they were able to do that, and other people weren't as fortunate, but in my family was, and I'm very thankful for that.
Some in the history book they said Ho Chi Minh is the father of the country, who brought independence, happiness, and prosperity to Vietnamese people. Do you believe that?
I don't believe that, because when I traveled back to Vietnam when I was 14, I felt that people there, they acted to look good, but they had to think twice about whatever their activities, and always being watched and judged, and just any liberties that I exercised in America, I couldn't act that way in Vietnam, and I just could sense that, and I find that that's totally a lie, just for propaganda.
I see. Now, when one of your American friends asked you about what Ho Chi Minh did good to Vietnamese people, how do you explain?
I have no words to say, really. I guess what he did was that instead of making life, if I compare it to Korea or something, I guess it's nice that it's under one country, but at the same time there's no liberties. So I don't think that he's done anything good that I can think of.
How about your friend about your age, American friend and Vietnamese American? They really care about what happened in about history, do they?
I think that most of my friends, they're more interested in what they're doing tonight instead of what happened back then, and they're so distant from what Vietnam is. Unless they come back to the country and are active in the community, I think the majority of them are just interested in what career paths. So I think if they consider it boring, or a topic of the past that their parents talk about. But they don't have any strong ties to it necessarily. And American friends, they'll ask about it, but usually they'll ask more about Vietnamese food and Vietnamese culture as opposed to the war. Like I said, it's not really covered in American history books unless you watch an action movie during that time period.
Well, you're now a young adult, and someday you're gonna get married. How you explain to your children about the tradition of the family? And all that.
Well, how I explained it to them is to really they came from a long line of fishermen, and that their belief and being Catholic was really what made them leave and to be able to practice their faith, much like the pilgrims when they came over to this country. And Thanksgiving is symbolic of that, of how we're thankful to not only religion, but to this great nation, that we're still here and have the opportunity to not be treated like second-class citizens, but to be able to become doctors, engineers, lawyers, businessmen, whatever you want to be is here.
Do you think the system that American adapt here is the perfect system, a good system?
I'd say it's not the perfect system, but it's still an experiment, and it's the best place to be right now, because it's a melting pot of so many different cultures, and nowhere else in the world can you get so many different kind of varieties of food and ethnicity, and exposed to different cultures. And so everywhere else that I've been, it's usually homogenous of other people, in like Europe or something, that they have one belief system or they do things a certain way. But here it's kind of just up to the people in that group, and most of the time they respect each other, and really it's nice to just live in that environment, to be exposed to different things and different ideas, and I think that's how we are able to advance compared to other countries.
Learn from your parent and your grandparent. People over here, sometimes they compare Republican with fascist. It's just like President Bush when he all the owner, and then the richer people, especially during his time, he have many policies that help the business people who can compare him with fascists. What do you think? What do you have to say about that compared with in Vietnam?
I'd say that things are becoming more politically charged here. In Vietnam, they say that they have 100% voter turnout because there's only really one there might be two parties, but one's is just for decoration, really. I'd say, but I can't say too much about the Vietnamese politics since I'm not actively participating in that. But I just say that it's definitely one-sided over there, and they make people feel like they have a choice, but when they really don't, and it's just a good old boys network, which means I know you and I like you, so I'm going to vote for you and put you in power and give you all these things. When here, it's I base my politicians based on their voting record, and if they protect their constituents, and so that's what I have to say about the political situations there and the political situations here.
Now, on the other hand, people over here, because of so many things changing from Obama administration, they're talking about having more poor, and then easier on getting aid from government or something, and they call him communist. What do you think about that? What is real communist and Obama communist? How you compare that?
Well, I think people like to label one another just because it basically makes them less than human. And instead of talking about real problems, they just rather talk about, they attack the person because he's the leader of that party. And based on what I know of real communism, like the government owns all the land, and that's not the case here. I mean, I've never heard of any law that Obama's going to put in place where the government's going to take all the land that they can. And really, it's more socialist, but I think they're confusing between the two, and things like they complain about socialist things like maybe healthcare or Social Security, but they're willing to go out to their mailbox and pick up that check and cash it, no problem. But they'll complain about it, but they won't really be active or do anything about it.
Go through all that. Do you think that Americans understand anything about communism at all, or any?
I think that much like a lot of wars have been started by yellow journalism, which is throwing mud in someone's eye, or like the shot heard around the world. It's people dressed in like they went to church and they made people hate the British because of that. I think that still goes on today in this world, and it's easy. People don't want to read the facts. They don't want to make their own decisions. They just want to believe in whatever someone's hidden agenda is, and really to catch yourself and to be open to other sources and really research it, but that takes time, and I think people are just kind of lazy and don't want to do that research.
Do you have anything to say about to your friend about what communists done to your family, and what is your decision if you need to make a choice of communism or something else?
My advice to my friends is just really, I know a lot of them, they don't necessarily have the best relationship with their parents or their family, and they just go to school or go to work, and then they don't really think much about talking to their family, but really just getting to know firsthand from your own mom or dad or uncle or aunt, cousin, whoever, of what real communism is, and how they make things sound great on paper, but in actuality it just puts them at a huge advantage and you at a disadvantage forever. And not just you, but all the generations that after you, and it's just them. That's what I have to say.
Do you have anything to say that I don't ask yet? Please say.
I'd say that it's count your blessings, even though you may not be in the situation that you want to be, or the career, the path, or whatever it is. Count your blessings that you have, and be thankful for them. And that's in the spirit of Thanksgiving, and be kind to one another while we're here. And it's united we stand, divided we fall. And if you need to stand for something, because if you don't stand for something, then it'll be easy to fall for anything.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Bob.